First log in to Oceanstor 9000 v3. We are going to create a local user. Click on Provisioning menu. Click on Authentication User. Create a local user. Click on Local Authentication User Group. Create a local user group. Once local user group has been created, click on Local Authentication User. Create a local user. Once local user has been created, click on Provisioning menu. We will create the first directory for CIFS purpose. Click on Create Directory icon. Create a directory. Click on the Advanced button and observe the setting available. Next is to complete the creation. Next is to create share. Click on Create Share icon. Check on CIFS and select the first directory. Now set permission. Add local user full control permission and click on Next button. Once the CIFS share has been created, go to Remote Desktop Connection Manager and connect to Windows CIFS session. While waiting for the remote desktop session, return to Oceanstor 9000 Device Manager. Click on System. Identify the front-end network. This will be addresses to connect to storage either using CIFS or NFS protocol. Switch to remote desktop. Open command prompt. Do a ping test to ensure all the storage front-end address is accessible. Next, perform a map network drive. Create a map network drive using any of the IP addresses found on the front-end network and using storage local user credential. Once the map network drive is created, create a file to test that we can perform read and write operation on the map network drive. Now switch back to Oceanstor 9000 v3. We are going to create a NFS share. Click on the Create Directory icon. Create a second directory for NFS purpose. Click on Create Share icon. Set the sharing to NFS and share path will be the newly created directory. On the set permission, add the Suse Linux host IP address. Switch to Suse Linux host. Identify the Linux host IP address by using ifconfig command. Please notice that there are two IP addresses. One is for management network and another one is for service network. Switch back to Device Manager. Add the Linux service IP address. Choose Read-Write Permission. Once we have create the NFS share, switch to Suse Linux. On the Suse Linux, type show mount-e. This will display any mount available for this server. Next, create a directory so we can mount the storage into it. Now perform the mount operation which is shown on the screen. Once completed, change directory to the newly created folder. Type mount to show that it is mounted. Now create a file using touch command. Create a new directory. List the content of the directory and notice that the file and directory that was created earlier. This proof that we have permission to create objects in this directory. Exit from the directory. Unmount from the storage. Return to the directory. Display the content, and this time the directory shown is empty. Exit from the directory again. Type mount to show that the server is no longer mounted to the storage. Now switch back to Oceanstor 9000 v3 Device Manager. We are going to configure InfoEqualizer. Click on Setting menu. Click on Cluster Settings. Select InfoEqualizer. Enable InfoEqualizer. On the dynamic domain name and static domain name, add the domain name given by the guide and finally save it. Next is to create a subnet. Click on Subnet Management. Select on Default. Click on Add. This will add the node IP addresses for using dynamic domain name. Next is to assign the DNS server IP address. Click on Network Setting. The IP address has been assigned. Just perform test to ensure that the address is not taken by other device. Now click on Zone. Click on the root zone. View the properties of the zone. Click on Create. Create a new zone and assign the load balancing as comprehensive node load. Add nodes into the newly created zone. Verify that all the nodes obtain IP addresses for dynamic domain name. Verify that root zone does not have any nodes now. Switch to Windows Server. Configure the Windows Server with DNS Server. Select the second local area connection. Configure the IPv4 property. Assign the DNS server IP. Open the command prompt. Perform NS lookup on the static domain name that we have created. Create a map network drive using domain name. Verify that map network drive using domain name is successful and we can see the file that we had created earlier. Lastly, disconnect the map network drive. Switch to Suse Linux. Using vEditor, add nameserver to revolve.conf file. Perform NS lookup to the dynamic domain name. Once verification completed, perform mount using domain name instead of IP address. Change directory into dir002. List the content of the directory. Verify that previously created file and folder is available. Now create a new directory. Create a new test file. List the content of the directory to show the newly created objects. Exit from the directory. Unmount the directory. Type mount to show that unmount is successful. Return to Device Manager. Next we are going to demonstrate InfoAllocator. Click on Provisioning menu. Create a new directory and name it as Media. Just create a CIFS share on the media with everyone having full control. In order to create a quota, we can create it from InfoAllocator menu or create quota icon. Select the path which is media and click Next button. Add everyone. Set mandatory quota and assign the threshold as follows. Switch to Windows Server. Access the share folder called Media using UNC path. Now let's add some files into the shared, in order to see the restriction of the quota. As we can see here, if the file or folder exceeded the hard threshold, we would not able to save it. We are going to do map network drive. This will allow us to see the capacity easily. The map network drive display is maximum capacity 3 GB, which is the limit of hard threshold. The next step is to occupy as much data as possible, and we will use the device manager to observe the used capacity. Switch to Device Manager. Click on InfoAllocator. Click on Refresh button in order to see the usage. Please do take note the usage isn't updated real time. Wait for a few minutes for the information to be reflected. Next, let's look into infostamper features. Click on Data Protection menu. Click on Snapshot icon. Infostamper allow to create snapshot based on schedule. This demonstration is to show how to create a daily and weekly schedule snapshot for media directory. Next demonstration is to show how to manually create a single snapshot. Return to Windows servers. Open the map network drive. Notice there is no difference after using infostamper. Now press Alt button on your keyboard. Click on Tools and select on Folder option. Select Show Hidden Files, Folder and Drives. Now we can see a hidden folder name as .snapshot. Explore the snapshot directory. It will contain the manual snapshot that we had create earlier. There are another way to access the snapshot. Right-click on the File Explorer. Click on Properties. Click on Previous Versions. The snapshot will also be visible here. Finally is to demonstrate Oceanstor Toolkit or SmartKit. Close all the PuTTY and Windows CIFS Remote Desktop. Open File Explorer. Click on D Drive. Open Oceanstor Toolkit folder. Extract the file. Install the Oceanstor Toolkit. Once the installation is completed, open the Oceanstor. We do not need to activate the toolkit. Click on Device. We are going to add the Oceanstor 9000 v3. Input the Oceanstor 9000 v3 IP address. Input the username as OMUser. If we encounter the following error after multiple attempt, switch to Oceanstor 9000 Device Manager. Click on Settings menu. Click on Permission Settings. Select OMUser. Click on Unlock button. Afterward, lock button again. Return to Toolkit. Resume the login. Once login is successful, click on My Tools. Select Inspection Tools. Perform inspection as shown on the screen.